All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to demystify something absolutely fundamental to ASP.NET Core, middleware. We'll break down exactly what it is, see how it works, and figure out how you can use it to build some really powerful and flexible web apps. So you click a link, a page pops up. Super simple, right? Well, not exactly. Behind the curtain, that one little click from your browser kicks off this whole intricate dance, a multi-step journey before you ever see a single pixel of the response. Probably the best way to picture this in your head is to think of an application assembly line. Before your request is fully built and ready to be delivered, it has to travel down this line, stopping at all these different stations where specific tasks get performed on it.
So what are these stations? What are these workers on our assembly line? Well, in the world of ASP.NET Core, that's what we call middleware.
Okay, so the textbook definition says they're software components that form a pipeline. But what does that really mean? Just think of it like this. Each piece of middleware gets a turn to look at the request coming in. It can do something with it, maybe change it a little, or just say, you're good, and pass it on down the line.
And that's why this is just so crucial. The entire framework is basically built around this pipeline idea. If you really want to get in there and customize how your app behaves, you absolutely have to get your head around middleware. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this whole assembly line, this pipeline, actually work? From the moment a request hits your server to the second a response is sent back out. The key thing to understand is that it's a round trip. A request comes in and it flows through each piece of middleware in order. 1, then 2, then 3. But then, on its way out, the response travels back through the exact same components, just in reverse order. So 3, then 2, then 1. And this leads to probably the most critical point of all. Order matters a lot. The sequence you add your middleware in your code is the exact sequence it's going to run. I mean, think about it. You want your security guard checking IDs before your file server starts handing out sensitive documents, right? That's why the order is everything.
All right, let's make this more concrete. We're going to look at some of the common off-the-shelf middleware that you're going to be using all the time in ASP.NET Core.
These are like your specialized workers on the line. You've got use routing, which is kind of like the traffic cop, figuring out exactly where this request needs to go. Then you have use static files. That's your warehouse worker, grabbing the CSS or JavaScript files. And then use authentication. Well, that's your security guard right at the front gate.
And speaking of security, this slide really nails a concept that trips a lot of people up. Authentication has to come first. That's the security guard asking, "Who are you?" and checking your ID. Only after your identity is confirmed does authorization step in and ask, "Okay, we know who you are, now what are you allowed to do?" It's a simple but critical distinction.
Okay, but here's where it gets really powerful. This whole system isn't a locked box. You're not stuck with just the pre-built stuff. You could actually design and build your own custom stations for the assembly line to do literally anything you want. So let's walk through a classic example. Let's say we want to build our own little station on the line, and its only job is to log the details of every single request that comes in and every response that goes out. Super useful for debugging, right? So to build one, you only need to know a few key pieces. There's this invoke method. That's where all your logic lives. But the real magic ingredient is this thing called the _next delegate. Think of it as your direct line to the very next worker on the assembly line. And this single line of code perfectly shows that round-trip thing we were talking about. Any code you write before this await under next call, that runs on the way in, as the request is coming down the pipeline. And any code you put after it, that runs on the way out, after everyone else down the line has done their job and the response is heading back to the user. All right, so let's tie this all together. What are the big takeaways? First, middleware is just a chain of components, a pipeline. Second, the order you put them in is absolutely critical. Third, you get a ton of great built-in tools for things like routing and security. And finally, and maybe most importantly, you can easily create your own custom middleware for whatever logic you can dream up. Once you grasp this pattern, you have total control over the entire request and response lifecycle in your application. It is an incredibly powerful design. So, now that you're in charge of the assembly line, the real question is, what are you going to build?